welcome to Miss Rose's Storytime. I'm reading The Bronze Bow by Elizabeth George Speare, and I'm reading the last bit of chapter 15 and hopefully 16. Alright, so on page 170, I hope everyone's doing well. Let's see what's going on with Daniel and Leah and all of them. There was another satisfaction in these days as Daniel grew confident of the skill in his work, his own hands. His work became a source of pleasure. It was satisfying to give a villager a pair of hinges for his house and to know that they were not only strong and well balanced, but exactly matched and pleasing to look at as well. He became aware that something more than usefulness could take shape under his hammer, and he began to experiment. One sultry afternoon, means like it was hot, when the work was slack, he picked from the floor a bit of bronze which had dropped from the molten mass. Seeing its dull shine between his fingers, he had an idea. He heated it carefully, pulled it from the fire with the smallest tongs, and tapped it gently with Simon's finest hammer. After several tries, he achieved a stroke delicate enough so that it would not flatten the small lump. And presently, he managed to beat out a fine wire. He heated it again and twisted it between his fingers and watched it slowly take the shape of a tiny, slender bow, no longer than his little finger. For a moment he stared at it with pure pleasure. Then he had a further inspiration. He rolled out and sharpened a slender bronze pin which could pass down like an arrow between the bow and the fine wire of its string, so that the bow became a brooch, and as he had seen the city folk wear to fasten their cloaks. Then he hid his experiment away, half ashamed of it and half proud. He would keep it to remind him of his purpose. He trains my hands for war, so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. He thought again of Jesus, and his hopes flared anew. Surely this man, like David of old, had the strength of God in him. If he willed, he could bend the bow of bronze. But was Jesus training his hands for war? Daniel was not sure. He must go back again that night to the Garden of Bethesda. For Daniel, the month of Ab was a time of waiting. It was only afterwards that he remembered these days as a time of quietness and hope. That's the end of chapter 15. So our comprehension questions. Who, what, when, where, why, and how? Who? Daniel and Leah, mainly. Why? Well, and Jesus. Daniel, Leah, Jesus, and Daniel going to Bethesda. That's the where from his town to hear Jesus, and then Leah asking questions because she deals with a lot of anxiety from what happened to her parents, so she doesn't like to go out of the home. And so when Daniel comes back, he's able to give her a piece of life out beyond her home. And who, what, when, and then where, Bethesda, how he walked 3 miles to hear Jesus, and who, what, when, where, how. Why? Because he was intrigued by what Jesus had to say. So those are some things to remember about the chapter 15. Now let's begin chapter 16 on page 172. I'll do anything, Daniel. You know that. Anything. Joel's voice shook with eager earnestness. His eyes in the flickering lamplight were fixed on his friend's face. The three sat crouched in the narrow passageway of Joel's home. Earlier that day, Daniel had received a summons by messenger from Rosh. He had climbed to the cave and then, after a brief conference, had gone straight to the city. Shortly before dark, Joel and Thasia had crept through the passageway to join him. Daniel brought with him the long-awaited orders from Rosh to Joel. At first, waiting in the dark passageway, Daniel had battled with his own jealousy, that Joel should have the first chance to act, while he himself, the one who had brought Joel in as a recruit, should stand aside and wait. But now he was beginning to see that things reasonably. This was only the beginning. Rosh needs some information, he told his eager friend. You're the only one who can get it, Joel. You know your way around the city and everyone is used to seeing you. None of the rest of us could get near. What does Rosh want? I'll get it, whatever it is. Daniel told him, his voice echoing the contempt with which Galileans always spoke of the tetrarch, the half-Jew Herod Antipas, who had been appointed to rule over them, and of the extravagant city he had built on the sea. Herod is entertaining a special legislation from Rome. While they're at Tiberias, they plan to come up to Capernaum for a day or so to inspect the garrison there. For some people, the rich ones who today to Rome, that will be a great occasion. Mattathias, the banker, is giving a banquet for the whole legislation, and some of the richest men in Capernaum will be there. Mattathias, who would do anything to gain favor with the tetrarch, said Joel with scorn. How does Rosh know about the banquet? Don't ask me how. He has his own ways. What he wants to know is what others will be there, the names of all of them, and the day and the time when the banquet will take place. Joel nodded. I can see why. It would give us a good idea which men would be against us. Any Jew who would eat at the tetrarch's table. That's it. We need to know our enemies as well as our friends. Is that all I have to do? Just find out those things? Joe looked disappointed. You may not find it so easy. Rosh didn't have any idea how you'd go about it. He left all that to you. How will I get the word to Rosh? Asked Joe, looking flattered. I'll take care of that. Bring what you find to me or send it by one of the band, someone we can trust. I'll see that it gets to Rosh. Joel's eyes began to sparkle at the thought of intrigue. Let's see, he began. It doesn't really help that people know me here. That kind would hold their tongues because of Father. I don't think I'd find out a thing. Besides, Matthias and Father don't speak to each other. No, the servants are the ones to talk to. If I could get into the servants, if I could sell something. Fish! Thasia broke in. You could get all the fish you want from Simon and Andrew. At moments like this, caught up in the same excitement, the brother and sister were unmistakably twins. Good idea, Joe flashed. I'll get a basket full of extra fine ones and peddle them for a good price. I can say I'll take orders for any special occasion. You know how the kitchen slaves talk about a party. I'm sure it would work. Struggling with envy again, Daniel sat silent. Joel was too excited to wonder why he, the youngest of the group, should have been given this assignment. The truth was, Daniel knew Rosh had no one else to send. The band in the mountains boasted more muscles than wit. How far would he himself get with his smith's shoulders and his country manners? Joel had to be the one. Then, watching Joel's rapt, flushed face, Daniel felt not envy, but unexpected misgiving. If anything went wrong, he glanced at Thesea. Her eyes met his, and in them he saw his own doubt suddenly mirrored. Joel, he said, you don't have to do this. Rosh has no right to order you. Why hasn't he, if he asked you? It's different with me. Why is it different? I'm nobody. You have your future to think of, and your father and mother and Thesea. No, said Thesea quickly, not me. I took the oath with you, remember? Only Daniel, in this a dangerous thing. Stop fussing, both of you, said Joel, with new importance. Let me think. I can get the fish early, before it's light, but suppose Father finds out I'm not in school. Perhaps I could ask him for a holiday. Thesea leaned forward. Joel, I have an idea. What if you and Daniel were seen going out to the city tomorrow morning? Suppose you passed the guards and even spoke to them, so if we needed, people could swear they had seen you. Wouldn't that leave you free to do anything you like? Joel stared at his sister, and then his face came alive like hers. Thace! Why didn't I think of that? Would you do it, honestly? You know I would. As always, Daniel was baffled by the swiftness with which these two caught up each other's thoughts and left him stumbling behind. I don't see, he said, annoyed. Joel laughed. We've done it plenty of times in the past just for the fun of it. When we were little and her hair was short, we used to change clothes, and sometimes we fooled the neighbors. The nearsighted ones, at least. Of course, she's shorter now, but unless we stand side by side, who would notice? Daniel caught on. You mean, of course, Joel interrupted him as he did his sister without realizing it. Thace wears my clothes, and with her hair back under the turban, who's to know she's not a boy? Then you two go about together. I'll arrange for a day off. You could go, somewhere out of the city would be best, where we're not too well known. We'll go to visit Leah. I've been wanting it to for days. In the face of their enthusiasm, Daniel's scruples melted. Before he crept out of the passageway and set out for the village, the three had agreed to meet next morning by the boats of Simon and Andrew. Before dawn, Daniel joined the farmers on the road to the city. At the harbor, a crowd waited hopefully by the fishing boats. As he drew near, two boys moved from the rest and came to meet him. One was a sturdy barefoot fisherman in a rough cotton tunic, his throat and arms bare. The other made Daniel gasp. Beneath a close-bound turban was half hidden a second Joel, younger, smooth-faced, more finely drawn, but with the same lustrous eyes. Thesea tipped back her head for Daniel's scrutiny in a gesture that reminded him of Leah. It's not quite so perfect as it used to be, she admitted cheerfully. We'd better keep away from the marketplace. Once out of town, I'll be safe. Both brother and sister were relishing their conspiracy. Their high spirits made his own doubts seem niggardly. Joel had already arranged for a consignment of fish and had them hidden under a half-upturned boat, packed under fresh green leaves in a woven basket. Presently, he set off with a swaggering step and a wide grin. Then Thesea took control with a brisk efficiency that surprised Daniel. We'll go this way, she directed. We won't be so likely to meet anyone. Aren't you going to wait? Daniel asked, surprised. Jesus will be here soon. A slight cloud darkened her face. No, she said. Not this morning. I'd rather get out of the city. I thought you meant to be seen. Yes, well, I don't want to meet anyone face to face. She hurried him along unfamiliar streets towards the gates of the city. For a time they walked in silence, and then Theseus spoke. It isn't really that I'm afraid to be seen, she said honestly. I didn't want to wait for Jesus. I didn't want to see his face when he saw me like this. Daniel was surprised. Then he remembered dimly the ancient law that forbade a man and woman to wear each other's garments. Are you worried about the law? He asked. I don't think Jesus. Oh, the law, she replied. Joel and I have broken so many laws lately that one more wouldn't matter. She paused, embarrassed, because he must know that any laws she and Joel had broken had to do with their visits to Daniel's house. Then she hurried on. It's just that I don't want to face Jesus with a lie. I couldn't bear the way his eyes would look at me. If he understood the reason, he wouldn't blame you. Yes, I think he would, she said thoughtfully. I think that for Jesus, a lie is impossible, no matter what the reason. In war, a lie is a weapon, said Daniel. We have to use what weapons we have. Even Jesus must see that. I don't think he would see it at all, said Thesia. She walked on a little way, then she spoke again. Daniel, what makes you and Joel so sure that Jesus means to make war? He says that the kingdom is at hand. What else can that mean? Did you ever think he might mean that the kingdom will come some other way, without any fighting? You mean just wait forever, like your father says? Theseus' forehead wrinkled in an effort to put her thoughts into words. Not exactly. You see, Jesus has made me see that we don't need to wait for God to care for us. He does that now. Every one of us. Jesus says that God sees into our hearts and he loves us. If everyone understood that, every man and woman every man and woman would start rid of us, the Romans. Suppose the Romans too could understand. He stopped in the road and stared at her. Romans? You think God loves the Romans? Theseus sighed. That's impossible, I suppose. Then why does he say that we must love our enemies?